Welcome to this episode of The Good, The Bad and The Odd One Out with your host Mark. Today I'd like to talk about films 7 to 10 of the Star Trek canon. That's starting with Star Trek Generations and ending with Star Trek Nemesis. All of the next gen films, in fact. Okay, this is a follow-up to my first set of Star Trek film discussions. There's a couple of podcasts before this one. Go and look it up. I cover films 1 to 6 in that. This one starts with number 7, Generations, which I believe, well, it was made 3 years after the number 6. It involves some of the cast from the original series, namely William Shatner specifically, but there's also Scotty and Chekhov also appear briefly at the beginning. And the film starts with apparently Kirk, some weird ribbon in space, a ship being threatened by the Enterprise with a different captain played by the guy that was in, I can't remember his name. He was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was the sad one, Ferris's mate in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Obviously he's a lot older here. He plays the new captain. They have to go on a rescue, but the new ship's been refurbished, so they've got basically nothing. They've got no missiles. They haven't got a tractor beam. There's a lot of things missing from the ship because they think it's just going for like a presentational voyage, but then they get called to this rescue. Kirk's on board as he's a captain, but he's retiring, so he's not the captain anymore, but he's there as like a guest of honour. Anyway, this captain can't figure out what to do. These ships need to be rescued from this ribbon thing, energy ribbon in space. The captain finally runs out of ideas and asks Kirk to intervene. Kirk says we have to go in and get them, basically, even though we're endangering ourselves. Anyway, basically some people get rescued, not all of them, but in the whole effort, part of the ship gets destroyed, a section of the ship, with Kirk in part of that ship. So as far as everyone's concerned, Kirk's dead. This ribbon has destroyed him. Anyway, cut forward, we go to the next gen era. I think they say something like 78 years later or something like that. And one of the characters we see rescued is Malcolm McDowell, who plays this Dr. Soren. And also, I think we see Whoopi Goldberg in that rescue too. Anyway, we go to the next gen, and there's the next gen crew are doing their thing. There's some debate about Data having like this emotion chip thing and what to do with it, and that kind of, he decides to activate it for various reasons because he doesn't feel he can progress in his understanding or quest for humanity without it. And somehow it gets locked on, so he has to experience emotion. That's kind of an interesting little side plot, and it's okay. But film meanders about a bit. It's not a good film. The crew of the next gen are introduced by having this sequence where Worf gets some award or other. I can't remember, promotion I think, and they're all like pretending to be part of this crew on a ship out to sea, and make him walk the plank and make him jump for something on the plank, and then they make the plank disappear. It's quite a painful sequence, really. They must have been a bit embarrassed to do this because it's silly. They're all in like Napoleonic Wars outfits kind of thing, turn of the 19th century sort of outfits, and it's just silly. Anyway, they go back to what they were doing. It turns out there's what's happened? I can't even remember this film. I haven't watched it that long ago, and I have real trouble remembering much what happens in it. Essentially, they have to try this ribbons things happening, and they realise. It turns out Soren's behind something that's causing destruction, which is deliberately destroying planets or stars or whatever to alter gravitational fields in space, which then sends the ribbon a certain direction. And they figure that you can't approach the ribbon with a ship because most of the time they destroy. Despite what happened at the beginning, people win. This didn't quite happen at the beginning, but they insist you can't approach the ribbon with a ship because it'll get destroyed. But they realise you get sucked into some sort of vortex which is where time doesn't exist and everyone's happy or something like that. This is basically Picard gets this off of Whoopi Goldberg's character, which sounds, okay, and they realise Soren's up to this, so they have to try and stop him. Soren's meanwhile got these got these plans with Klingons to create disruption on the promise he'll give them this super powerful weapon, and it's a pair of sisters, and they do. I'm trying to think. There's some quite lame comedy stuff in this. Like they kidnap Geordie, but then they let him free or release him or let him escape or whatever. But they've put a camera in his visor. And they have when they first turn it on, they see a close up of Beverly Crusher and these ugly looking hags of Klingon women sort of pull a face and say, humans are so disgusting. But basically they do that so when Geordie looks at a certain panel and clicks some things, they see a certain code which allows them to attack the Enterprise. So there's a bit of shenanigans there. The Enterprise is quite crippled. They take out the Klingons, but it's enough to cause irreparable damage, and they have to separate the saucer, and the saucer then crashes into this planet they're over. It's kind of cool, that bit. The crash is kind of cool, but like I say, it feels a bit contrived, and it doesn't feel very coherent, and you kind of know it's there to serve some other purpose. And it is. In fact, what happens is Picard gets sucked into this band with Soren. He tries to stop Soren first, firing this rocket which destroys the sun, which blots out billions or millions of lives on this system, habitable system, just so this ribbon goes into the planet that Soren's on. Anyway, it succeeds. The ribbon hits it. Soren goes into this vortex thing. So does Picard. And then he finds himself in a place where he's got a family and they're celebrating Christmas, and he's obviously lost his memory about what's going on. It turns out this vortex is somewhere you can always be happy, and that's what Soren wants. He's lost his family. He doesn't care anymore. He just wants to go to a place where he can be happy, and that's the point of all this. Anyway, for some reason, there's baubles on the crystal tree glow funny and make Picard start realising it ain't quite right, and he realises he's not where he should be, and he goes off and he finds Kirk, and then we go through this tiresome thing of him trying to persuade Kirk to come sort of help him. This is all a contrivance so we can get Picard and Kirk on the same screen at the same time, and it's not a great one. And in you know that Shatner had some ideas, and he managed to get input into this script that made it real baggy. There's things where he's doing a bit of cooking, and he goes for a bit of horse riding, all things that we know William Shatner does. And then finally persuades him, and they all go off. The pair of them go off and somehow appear on this planet earlier in the timeline to fight Soren. It's just nonsense, really. It just doesn't gel at all. It's quite a terrible film, really. Anyway, they manage to stop him, but it turns out Kirk dies. So there's a Kirk death scene, which is quite good. I have to say, that is quite good. So there was two good things about this film, really. There was the crash, which is kind of cool, and where the saucer has to detach and crash into a planet. That I liked, and the Kirk death scene was pretty good. Otherwise, it was a pretty poor effort. I'm trying to decide how I feel about it in terms of some of the others. I think this is the worst one of the Next Gen films. In fact, I prefer Star Trek 5 to this. It's quite poor. Yeah, I think this is the worst of those original 10. Original crew and Next Gen crew films. Those first 10 before the J.J. Abrams boot. So it's got that for going through it. Right. Okay. So I'm going to give that. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't a complete turkey. It was just flat and boring. I'm going to give it 55 out of 100. I did rate it a little higher when I first saw it, but the more I think about it, the more I don't like it. Okay, that then leads on 2 years later that we came to First Contact. This film, interestingly, was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who plays Riker. And it's interesting, there's this tradition of occasional films where one of the cast direct. Now, this worked to great success with Nimoy. in Star Trek 3 and 4, and quite disastrously when Shatner took the reins with number 5, because he had way too much control over the dialogue and stuff, it appears to me. But having said that, I like bits of 5, unlike a lot of people. Anyway, Frakes there's a great job here. They got a good script, it really works, and they got the Borg. We got a decent enemy. These are the best enemies since Khan. Easily. And the Borg Queen's really something. That's something new that they're using old things Trekkies are familiar with. The Borg, everyone, the Trekkies know, but Borg Queen, interesting concept, and really engages your enthusiasm, I think. The script's a little meandering in places, but nothing that can't be forgiven, because there's some really great moments in this. We get to meet the man, what's his name? I'm going to say Zac Efron, but it's not that. It's Zephram Cochrane. That's it, Zephram Cochrane. He's the man who invents warp drive. So therefore, his first flight happens to occur when another ship of alien origin is passing close by to Earth, so they detect it, and that's always a sign, apparently, which sounds quite sensible to me, that as soon as a civilization invent warp drive, they're contacted by the Federation or whatever, and they have to kind of help him. They realise the Borg, it all kicks off because this big Borg ship that gets through the time, basically the Borg attacks Earth in a big cube. They fight it, because Picard's been sent across the galaxy because they were a bit worried about how he's going to react with the Borg around, because he has been taken by the Borg and recovered it in the TV series. But he disobeys orders and comes back and joins in the fight, tells everyone where to shoot the ship, even though it appears to be a non-important part of the ship, and it blows. But when it blows, a smaller ball-shaped ship comes out and starts racing towards Earth, and they chase it, but it starts emitting tachyons, and they realise it's got some sort of time travel system, and the Enterprise chases it, but then the readings from the planet start changing and become like the whole planet's Borg, and they realise this ship going back in time somehow converts Earth to a Borg civilization. Well, I say somehow, it's pretty obvious how that happens. So they can't break the time stream because they'll just go into that universe and disappear. They have to follow it through and try and stop it doing what it's going to do, which is kind of cool. Then they get to the chasing it across the planet, and it's getting closer and closer. It starts a barrage of missiles onto the surface, and they detect where it's firing, get a location on that, but they manage to destroy that ball, thinking it's all over. And then they realise it's the location of where Zachary Cochrane invented warp drive, and they have to beam down to see if he's okay, still alive and stuff like that, because if they have destroyed him, first contact won't be established. Anyway, they find he's alive, which is cool. What they don't know is some of the Borg have transported onto the Enterprise and slowly converting it to their tech, and growing in number and stuff like that, which is a really nice touch, not knowing your enemies on your own ship and then starting to lose sections of it. There's all sorts of shenanigans on the surface. For example, they start telling Zachary Cochrane, Zephram Cochrane. Oh man, I'm getting this so wrong. Zephram Cochrane is considered a hero, and it gives him the cold feet, and he runs away, but they have to go chase him and persuade him he really has to do this. He plays the rock and roll music and stuff like that, and fine. Old Troy drinks with him because, to keep him on side, and that's kind of okay. There's some great stuff in that, actually. Nice. James Cornwell's Zephram Cochrane, and he's pretty good performance. There's also this woman in it who I've not seen anything else, who's called Lily, a black lady with short hair. She's really good. That character is really good, because when I first saw the film, I was feeling that she was like some sort of, I don't know what she was doing in it, but it really became, I don't know, on subsequent watches it becomes apparent to me she's really important in the development of Jean-Luc Picard's sort of character. One of the great things about this is Jean-Luc Picard, actually, is proper full-on Ahab. She calls him Ahab at one point. He's obsessed with beating the Borg. He will not surrender. In fact, he insists once the Borg start managing to convert into all their weapons, so they can't use weaponry at all against the Borg because they're too well shielded. He insists all crew start fighting hand to hand, and Mr. Wolf advises they leave and self-destruct the ship to try and stop the Borg. Because what they're finding is the Borg of doing ancillary things, they only take so many decks, then they stop and they don't know why, and then they realise they're converting a certain thing on the ship to a transmitter. They're just going to send a beam out into deep space to where they know other Borg will be at that timeline to come, and then once they get reinforcements, game over kind of thing, which is a nifty plan, well, logically coherent, sounds like the sort of thing the Borg would do. Nice plotting. So what Picard and that have to do is they have to somehow destroy it. Now the choice is to destroy the ship or to destroy the transmitter and keep fighting. Picard wants to do that, and they manage to succeed, but they realise the Borg are up to other things, and the best way to stop them is to blow up the ship. But Picard refuses. He says he will not surrender, and he gives some great speeches about it.
I will not sacrifice the Enterprise. We've made too many compromises already, too many retreats. They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther. And I will make them pay for what they've done.
Meanwhile, Lily's sort of saying, you're like Ahab and all this. In addition to this, Data's been captured by the Borg, and the Borg Queen's kind of tempting him to join them by doing things like grafting real skin onto him, making him part human, which gives him sensations he's never felt before. That was really well handled too. That's a really interesting sort of bit. So essentially we've got two stories going on here. One's Ahab, one's Pinocchio, and it kind of works really well. It's really well put together and a good directing job by Frakes. And essentially they succeed, they destroy the Borg, this and that happens. They manage to get the first contact going, and Vulcans actually establish first contact with humans, which ties it all up. The whole human-Vulcan closeness and tightness within the Federation, really nicely. Really terrific film this was. Really enjoyed it. By far the best of the Next Gen films, and I personally think this is probably the second best Star Trek film. Out of all 12, I like it that much. I give it 90 out of 100. Okay, that brings... I'll rattle through the next ones a bit quicker because they're not very good. Number 9 in the sequence is Insurrection. This involved a plot where they find a planet, or rather, Data goes mad and he's on this archaeological, whatever you call it, expedition where they're observing this planet where everyone's really happy and doesn't seem to age. They think it's pre-industrial, so the Prime Directive states they cannot interfere, but at one point Data goes a bit mad and starts running around, they got these invisibility suits. He takes the helmet off so that you can see his head moving around, and essentially they get him back and they tell Picard that he's got to come and pick him up. And it turns out they figured out there's this special radiation concentration on this planet that has restorative qualities and can actually reverse aging, this, that and the other, and there's this big experiment that can be done that will pass these benefits to everyone in the Federation. But they have to relocate this tribe to do it. Prime Directive states they can't be made aware of the condition, so what they figure is they're going to transport them overnight while they're sleeping onto a giant holodeck that replicates the planet and move them up to a completely different location without them even being aware of it. Anyway, it turns out these people aren't as naive as it first appears. They're actually very knowledgeable. They travelled the stars. They don't create a warp drive, but they choose to live in a more simple way. They live in a place where they don't age, in effect. They're hundreds of years old and they don't age and everything's peaceful. And all this is going on. Meanwhile, Picard's really against this because he's taking the view that forced relocations never end well. It's always tragic. And he's quite right, obviously. But it's an interesting point of view and way of looking at things. I like this. I like that. Sorry, I like that idea. However, it didn't quite work. In practice, it was kind of dull. It did feel like an extended episode with some extra money spent on some of the effects. And it just wasn't that thrilling. Again, Jonathan Frakes directed it, but for some reason this one was a real misstep. They went too much TV series feel to it, and not enough cinematic. And the end just went through 1 or 2 or 3 too many loops through the roller coaster as well. So it built to a nice end, but it just kept going on and on when it could have been. There you go. Stop there. Let's have our little respite scene, and there it ends. But here we go. It didn't work. It just got tiresome. I'd give it 65 out of 100. So I'll rate it higher than Generations, but it was okay. Number 10, Nemesis. Now this was, I think, out of all of these, the only one I actually sat through and watched all the way through. This could have been pretty good. Actually, the premise where basically of Jean-Luc Picard having to face off against an earlier version of himself brought up under different circumstances is a good one, I think. And they picked Tom Hardy to play the younger Picard, which didn't match so much in the looks, but in the sort of gravitas. No, not a bad match, not bad. Could have been better, but not bad. But the problem with it was they had Patrick Stewart and Tom Hardy, and that with any half decent writing, that should have cracked along and been quite dramatic. But it just felt a bit tired, and it was like a bit meandering. They were getting punchier. They didn't know really what to do with this. It felt to me the director, I don't know who it was. It wasn't Jonathan Frakes, but it wasn't one who's ever done anything on the series before. It felt he was making a generic science fiction film rather than playing to the characters. Except for maybe Picard, he kind of understood Picard, I think, but the rest of them didn't really have much going on or to do. And it just went by and finished and yeah, okay. I think this is probably the second worst. I prefer the motion picture to this. 61 out of 100 for this, so it's slightly better than Generations. Well, it was better than Generations, but it had nothing really to make it stand out. At least Generations had Kirk's death, you know what I mean? And Sorin was quite a good bad guy. This, to me, didn't have really anything. Even Jean-Luc Picard as his own enemy didn't really stand out. The only interesting thing I found in it was seeing the two colonies, Remus and Romulus, and what the Remans looked like compared to the Romulans. And they were like a slave race to the Romulans. It was kind of interesting. Kind of like that. And the whole premise of Picard succeeding in whatever environment he happens to get raided in, that was kind of interesting too. But they're interesting ideas executed in such a way as it was boring and it was dull. And it didn't stick in the memory at all. Actually, I think I'm going to give it even less than that. I'll give it. Did I say a score? I can't remember. 59 out of 100. So, as I say, a bit better than Generations, but tiresome. Okay, then that's it for those. In terms of my favourites, I'd have to say Wrath Khan easily, followed up by First Contact. Out of I'm not just considering these 10. If we take all 12 Star Trek films, I'd then have to say the first reboot, Star Trek from 2009, would be my third favourite. Then the Into Darkness would be my fourth. After that, Star Trek 3 and 4 are kind of the same thing, and so I'm going to rate them about the same. I like those two. Then number 5. I won't go through the rest, but that's kind of my general order. I think it's became clear to me that there's a couple of these, well, probably 3 of these Star Trek Next Gen films I just don't like. But First Contact, I think, is an excellent film. Okay, then, I hope you enjoyed that. And on our main podcast, just want to make a reminder, we'll be coming up to our 100th episode very soon. Feel free to give us some feedback. If you want to get hold of us, just check out the website, www.thegoodthebadandtheodd.com. That'd be cool. Thanks, bye.
And he piled upon the whale's white hump The sum of all the rage and hate felt by his whole race. If his chest had been a cannon, he would have shot his heart upon it.